What's up guys, it's Minx. In the last video, we created two methods to fix indoor and outdoor enemy spawns. If you haven't checked that out, check out that last video. It's really short. It's not really, to be honest, if you're going to skip a video, that would be the video to skip. The code's available on the GitHub, just a link with the one file that includes both of these methods. In this video, we're going to move these over and we're going to add the ability to spawn enemies. Which is super easy. Since I figured it out a long time ago. It's super easy to implement. We're going to implement a random one today, and at some point in the future, we're going to implement a custom one that spawns where we want them to. But today, we want to at least get that added. And I want to do it in a as clean a way as possible. I looked at my previous source code and it's like, this is kind of gross. So we're going to do it better today. Um, yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to need a couple things today before we can even begin to do that. We're going to need to add some references. I was thinking about straight up like making a class for all these things. It's like, well, we could do this. Then I was like, no, that's kind of gross. There's because then I'm gonna have to add another like a qualification. So for example, we're already going tutorial mod base.instance indoor enemy list. Now we add an object that would have to be stored inside a plugin that would hold all that information. We have to go tutorial mod base.instance stored values dot value whatever that value is equals or whatever to call it, which is ridiculous. So instead, I opted just to leave it all in here, and we're going to leave it in here. So that's okay. We need two things. Firstly, we need an internal round manager. I'm just going to call it current round, and we need an internal selectable level, and we need current level. So something to note for these: this current level always exists while in game, while in a match will only be set if the player is host. So current level is pulled from from a method that only gets called if the player is a host. So we need to keep that in mind. If the player is not a host, then that won't exist. And then, excuse me, current round will always exist no matter what. So that matters. Now, in this case, we're going to be using both. Both are needed for this particular method. However, in the future, we may need to keep this in mind if we're trying to do something that's non-host. It's like, oh, we can use current round to do something. So anyway, let's go. We can close out of this for now. I still have this. So this is where I'm moving everything. So, well, not everything. So we're going to be moving fix indoor enemy spawns and fix outdoor enemy spawns to our utils. So go ahead and make a new item under your project and I call it GameMaster Utilities. I was going to call it Utilities, but it may conflict with like, I don't know, something else's utilities. And conflictions annoy the heck out of me when how they work. So go ahead and create a new thing and then go to your round manager patch and cut these two methods out and stick them in there. Save it, go back to round manager, and then qualify these with the name of the class. Game Master Utilities. Or if you prefer to put them somewhere else, feel free. You can make an instance that handles these things. I'm just going to use a class that does it. For example, we could make this utility an instance and then have these variables stored on that instance. Damn, that's actually not a bad idea. But I digress. I'm just gonna do it this way. We're gonna stick with the going through the static methods. It's fine. Maybe at some point we can rewrite that particular part because it wouldn't be hard to rewrite it to an instance. We just have to change a lot of code at that point because of how it gets referenced. Anyway, so we've got these things moved over and we've got them added here, so that's perfectly fine. Now that we've done that, we can actually go back to our utilities and let's write the script that's going to allow us to spawn an enemy randomly. So I'm not gonna, okay, I'm gonna explain it as we write it, and maybe I'll look over at the code in the game to see it's like, why do we do this? Because what I ended up doing is actually a lot of what how the developer did it. I didn't like, maybe they use like weighted values to determine randomness, and I just did straight up random. But I basically did what the developer did. I found, all right, how are you spawning enemies? Where is this happening in the code? It's happening here. What are you doing? Okay, I'm going to do that. That's pretty much all that was. So nothing really special there. But anyway, let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to make an internal. And since this is, I'm not treating this like an instance, we're just going to make it static. And I'm just going to do a void because it shouldn't return anything. Maybe in the future we could like return true or false. But for now, we're just going to void enemy, and I'm going to specify that this at a random location for now, because we're going to add ones that are more specific, and maybe we want to do that. So we're going to do a string of enemy name equals, and I'm kind of odd at this point. When I originally wrote this one, I was like, you can do it via string or enemy type. Now, the thing is, when we pull some references, we don't use the enemy type, we use a spawnable enemy with rarity to get the enemy type, which is whatever. Um, So I kind of scrapped that part, and at this point I already set this up this way, and this is fine to be honest. It can be default to nothing. Int amount equals 1, so we always have 1 if we're calling the spawn. If enemy name is equal to that, if it's not been set, we're just going to go ahead and return. That's kind of a stupid point because I know I'm gonna be the only one calling this or whatever, and maybe if someone else is following along doing it the same way, and you'll understand, hey, this this should never be empty, but for whatever reason it feels like this needs to be done. And we're gonna define an int index of enemy to spawn. So equals -1. When I originally wrote this, I instead of doing it this way, I had some bools to check if an enemy was found, and that was super excessive. Instead, we're just going to set this to -1, and then we're going to check for enemies. If these enemies don't exist, we are going to proceed, and we will know if they don't exist because this will still be -1. And if it isn't -1, then we know we found it. So we could say for each spawnable enemy with rarity enemy in our tutorial mod base, in my case, tutorial mod base dot instance dot indoor enemy list. So for each of the enemies in our inside one, this is not too dissimilar to what I've done before. If the enemy dot enemy type dot enemy name dot, I'm gonna say dot to lower, even though it's probably unneeded, unnecessary, is equal to enemy name dot to lower. We're going to say so at this point we have found an existing indoor enemy in the game. It doesn't necessarily mean the enemy can be spawned on the level. Maybe we didn't do the fix indoor enemy spawns or fix outdoor enemy spawns. It's maybe the player doesn't want that or something. I understand a lot do, but maybe they don't. So if this is the case, then we also want to say if tutorial mod base, dot instance dot current level dot enemies dot contains enemy. So just to reiterate, this is a list. So when we haven't set the current level variable yet. However, the current level, which is the selectable level, which we're going to end up getting from modify level here with the new level. We are going to use that to check to see if the enemies contain the enemy that we are looking at. So if the enemy exists, if it's in this list, and the enemy that we're looking at in this list exists inside the current level, we're going to go ahead and say index of enemy to spawn is equal to, and we can actually copy the tutorial mod base instance current level enemies index of that enemy that we just found that does exist. And we can say found enemy in the current level. And if we wanted to, we could actually say, like, we could do a print statement. So we could say hashtag debug, hashtag if debug, console.writeLine found enemy on server if it is not spawning, or found enemy in game if it is not spawning, it doesn't exist on the level. Try enabling enemy fix. Okay, we do that. Hashtag end if. So This is a debug thing. So if I were to switch this over to debug here, it would come up as an existing thing that only gets built in or only gets included in debug builds. So if someone's having an issue with the mod, it's like, hey, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? And we just have a debug build. It's like, hey, try this debug build, give me the logs. What does it say? After what happens when you spawn an enemy? What goes in the log? It says, "Hey, we found the enemy, but it's not spawning. Why doesn't it exist?" So we could do stuff like that. I'm not going to do a bunch of those. I'm just going to do the one here for now, and I'm going to leave mine on debug. I should not be building release like usual. But anyway, all this does is set the index. This doesn't actually spawn the enemy. So what do we need to do next? Well, if index of enemy to spawn is equal to -1, so if we have not found an enemy just yet, what do we need to do? We're actually going to do, the same thing, but for outdoor enemies. So we can, we can actually copy this for each loop here and paste it inside of this if statement. And then we just want to transfer it over to outdoor. So we want to do outdoor enemy list. If enemy.enemy type is fine, that's okay. We want to say current levels. We want to check the current level dot outdoor or outside enemies, and then we want the current level dot outside enemies. So now we have got an index either way, and then if for whatever reason we don't, so this still checks it. We can say if index of enemy to spawn is equal to -1, return. Because this means, regardless, we still have not found an enemy to spawn. To spawn. We haven't found the correct enemy. So now that we have done this, what we want to do is say in here, so inside of this thing, and actually no, we're gonna say spawn outdoor enemy, and then we're gonna say else off of the first index of enemy to spawn, so else spawn inside enemy. So essentially, just to specify or clarify, if after checking for indoor enemies it is not, or it is -1, that means we didn't find one, so we do outdoor. We do a check for outdoor. If the outdoor check returns an enemy, then we're going to spawn an enemy outside. Now, that's it. That's it for that. If index of enemy is not equal to -1, so it is equal to something else, when we get to it, that means we found an indoor enemy. We're going to skip all of this code, and we're going to go directly to spawning an inside enemy. So it's like it's not really spaghetti, but it's kind of goofy. It's a lot better than what I found or what I decided to do last time. Anyway, let's write the logic to spawn the enemy, and then we'll stick it inside of a for loop. So to spawn the enemy, we want to say we use the current round. So we say tutorial modbase dot instance dot current round dot spawn enemy on server. This is a method. This is what the developer uses to spawn enemies on the server. And to do this, we need to use a vent. So if we hover over it, it's like, hey, we need a spawn position. How do we get a spawn position? We could give it a spawn position, but I don't know the spawn positions. I could probably go find some good ones, but to find one that is dynamically created by the game when it loads a level inside, we could use that. So let's go ahead and do that. So to do that, we want to use an enemy vent. That's how I like to do it. And we'll say spawn vent equals tutorial modbase.instance.current round dot all enemy vents. And this is a list, so we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to do random since this is random. We're going to do a find the best one or like spawn at nearest or whatever later. I'm going to do unity engine dot random dot range, and it's going to be 0. And then unfortunately, we're going to grab a reference to this again here. So all vents dot length, and this will point us to a random vent from 0 to the end. And we can say spawn vent dot floor node dot position. Then we can go in for spawn vent dot floor node dot Euler angles dot y, and then we can do index of enemy to spawn. So, clarify what we just did. We grabbed a reference to a specific spawn vent using a random from 0 to the length of all the spawn vents, and we picked a random one, and then we used that to get the floor node to get a position to spawn the enemy at, and then we also used it to get the rotation of said enemy, so that way I don't think it matters too much, but I guess so it doesn't spawn facing a wall, I guess. I don't know. But that will do that. So that's the indoor ones. Indoor ones are easy. Now let's go and toss this in a for loop real quick. So we just say for I equals 0, I is less than amount, I plus plus. We can just do this I times, or amount times, I guess. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing for outside enemies. We don't have vents to spawn them from. That's okay. Do we still do this? No. We do something different. I'm going to say firsthand, I don't know why we do something different. All I know is we do something different. So don't kill the messenger. Whatever. I don't know. This is what it is. So we're going to say game object obj equals unity engine dot object dot instantiate. And this is where things become fun, because this is going to be a really long method that we're probably going to put down 3 lines. That's how bad this is. So let's come over here. And part of it is because I have to qualify it, but at the same time, it's also just long in general. It was long when I originally wrote it without having to fully qualify it. We do a tutorial mod base dot instance dot current level. Oops. Current level dot outside enemies. Index of enemy to spawn, that will pick it, and then we use the dot enemy type dot enemy prefab to give it a sort of a setup here. We're going to go ahead and comma, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter to go to the next line. So we're going to go down here, and it's going to be game object dot find game objects with tag, and we're looking for outside AI node. And we're going to use a that returns a list, and we're picking one. We're going to use a random here, and we're going to use unity engine random.range 0. And unfortunately, since we don't have a reference to this find objects with tag, we're just going to copy it and use the dot length. And we're going to -1 on this one. I'm fairly certain we need to do that because it is, yeah, it's an array, not a list. And I'm fairly certain it is slightly off. And we're going to use the go outside of the list marker. We're going to use .transform, .position, and that's probably going to toss you an error until we add the next one, which we just need to give it a rotation as well. So it's quaternion .euler vector 3 .0. Okay, so that is the first line. And that was the bad line. The second line is significantly easier, but that is line 1. That is 3 lines. I don't know why it's different. That's just how it's been done, and that's how I'm going to do it. Game object, obj.gameObject.get component. We need to set the network component to spawn, or we need to give it a network component and not destroy it with, or set it to destroy with the scene. So dot get component network object dot spawn destroy with scene is true. There we go. And that is it for our logic for spawning enemies. So this is good. What we're going to go ahead and do is test it out. So I was trying to see if maybe we could do some chat stuff, but for some reason chat's not really working. It's not because of the mod. I was testing it without the mod, and I don't know if it's Unity Explorer or something, but it wasn't letting me submit chat. Or maybe it could be because I played, there was no other players in the server. I'm not sure. So for now, we're just going to use the quick menu manager, and we're going to say open menu. I'm going to do a try just in case. GameMaster utilities that spawn enemy at random location. And we're going to do 2. I'm going to try the Jester. I'm going to give it like 5. And we're going to do the girl, which I believe is just girl if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. We'll check and make sure it's not like dress girl. Nope, it's just girl. Okay, so we got 5 jesters, 5 girls. And the only other thing we need to do, because these won't generally speaking spawn like that, we need to actually quote unquote fix them. Because we're calling the fix, but we're not actually using the fix. So we need to also fix it, I guess you could say. Um, so to fix it, we need to say new level enemies, and this is probably we're gonna put this behind a do we actually want to spawn all enemies, but for now this is fine. So tutorial mod base.instance dot indoor enemy list, and then we're just gonna copy this and say outdoor, and for this one they call it outside. And then we also need to get a reference to, or we need to set current level to our new level. So tutorial mod base dot instance dot current level equals new level. And that does it for current level. However, we also need to do our current round. So let's come up here and do a new patch. We need to do a new patch for this. So we'll do a static void round manager started. I need to get a reference to it, and the best way to do that is to use when it start. Round manager underscore underscore instance. And up here, we need to give it a harmony prefix. And it's a harmony patch on type of type start, or on method start. And we just want to say tutorial mod base, base.instance.current round equals instance. There we go. So all of those will be set. We'll have our things fixed and we should be good to go. So when we, just to reconfirm, when we open up our ESC menu, oh, we have to toss a catch in here, even though it's not going to do anything. Oh, we got a fail. What happened? Oh, I put a double equal here. Put a single equal, of course. And one other thing I missed actually while we're looking at it. Let's do A4. Actually, we'll just copy this. And cut these all in. Oops. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. There we go. So just want to make sure we toss that in the for loop in case we are spawning these. And yeah, okay, so now everything's good. Everything is patched as expected. So theoretically, we should be able to just go ahead and I'm going to hop into debug now. See tutorial mod, go into plugins, toss it in, and we should be able to see if our enemy spawning is working. There it goes. So we're going to ignore this, hide this stuff. We don't really need it. Though we are going to use the Object Explorer to see if our enemies are spawning. We'll go ahead and host. I'm curious if chat's going to work this time. Yeah, it's not doing anything. I don't have it patched, so I'm not really sure why it's not working. Probably a new, like, change. He fixed my server thing. I hope he doesn't fix the chat stuff because I really like the chat thing. Okay, so let me bring over my console here. And actually, we could also, I'll bring up the Object Explorer. And let's hit Escape. And bring up the console here. Oh, looks like little girls definitely spawned. Let's see. Are we seeing any? We're also seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jesters. Let's see if we can get some more in here. I don't know if it's going to call it again or how that works. Oh, yep, it definitely spawned more. Let's go see if we can find them. They all should be out. The girls should be outside. They should be out here like fucking with us already. They like to spawn here back in the day when I was originally testing stuff like this. I had the Unity Explorer. It's annoying. I do know for a fact that they really like to, like when I tested this earlier, they like to be inside. So I guess I don't know if they changed that to be just an indoor enemy. Okay, Nope. All right, that's enough of that. I heard the little girls and the jesters are there, so that's enough. So everything is working as expected so far, which is awesome. So we've got some stuff that is non-patch that does things, which I think is kind of cool because we often just focus on like what our patches do, rather than seeing what we can do without patches. And then of course the patches are still at the root of everything, but we also have our patches working as expected, spawning enemies. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of test material. And when I say test material, I mean things that are for testing. We could toss these in some hashtag if debug, make these happen automatically. So for example, we could say, again here, hashtag if debug, hashtag and if. So if we do a release build, it's not going to be doing that. Um, this isn't something I really want to, this isn't something in particular I'd want to keep in a debug build. I'd probably just stick to logging. We can close out of this. GameMaster Utilities is written as expected. We shouldn't need to make any changes. Oh, I'm in the plugin. GameMaster Utilities is written as expected. We shouldn't need to make any changes. If we wanted to make like a different method, like a spawn at a specific location, we're probably going to change change it, like make a new method for this. So this is fine. This is good. Going in back into Round Manager, the only thing I want to change is right here. So I don't want this to be happening automatically. So we're going to comment these out. We'll say to do, oops, to do, add behind a wall of, add behind and enable wall. G rule should allow all enemies. Um, or you'll say bool custom enemy list, because I actually may take this a step further and say which enemies do you want to spawn on the server. Do you want these three, this five, that one, whatever you get to pick with maybe check boxes or something. So enemies that are in or not in the list. So very cool. That'll fix it. So now it's back to running like normal. We don't mess with their list or anything, so that's fine. Everything else is good. We can close out of that. And awesome. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure we are back to not messing with things because that is kind of our default right now. With that said, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.